Fantastic. So can everyone see and hear me? Tracy, can you maybe just give me a thumbs up? Fantastic. Thanks, Tracy. Well, thanks, guys, for joining today's masterclass. We're going to learn all about how to heal your gut. Quite a big topic to get through, actually, and quite a lot of information. But just as an introductory, I think there's a few new faces. So those who don't know me or haven't worked with me before, I'm Sarah Emily. I'm a clinical herbalist and iridologist, women's health specialist with over 8 years of clinical experience. One of my major passions is actually doing webinars and sort of teaching sort of roles, because the idea is essentially to help my clients and help as many people as possible to learn the tools to be able to heal their bodies or allow their bodies to heal themselves. So the idea that eventually you can become your own doctor and you have the information and the tools to be able to do that. Particularly why I put this masterclass on tonight was because there's a lot of gut issues that I see in clinic. That's probably one of the most common conditions, or whether the client knows that they've got gut issues or not is another story. But most health conditions, if not all, comes back to some sort of gut link. And I was quite tired of seeing my clients being put on by their doctors, or maybe having this idea of symptomatic or dead end sort of approaches to their healing. Whereas if we can heal the gut, you're going to allow your body a fantastic chance to heal everything else. So that's why I did this masterclass, to really get down to the nitty-gritties of what's involved in healing the gut. So before we get started again, I've got a little herbal tea giveaway. So if you've had one of my masterclasses before, you know the drill. Basically, just take a photo of something that you find interesting in tonight's masterclass, share it on Instagram on your stories, and make sure you tag me. And then you go into the run to win one of my digest tea. One of my digest tea blends, essentially. Now, this tea I'm going to talk about a bit later, about the how amazing it is specifically for the gut and has amazing herbs in there. If you have access to that, I would definitely recommend getting on top and just taking a photo and sharing it to Instagram. But make sure you tag me. That's really important, because I don't follow everyone, and I think Instagram only tells me if you tag me. So, sorry, I'm just letting other people in as much as we can. Fantastic. So, what are we going to learn? Well, firstly, truth, fundamental truth. Maybe you guys have heard of Hippocrates before, but he's basically the father of medicine, and he coined the very famous term, all disease begins in the gut. So if all disease begins in the gut, it's pretty clear that health also begins in the gut. The road or the path to health begins in the gut. So that is what we're going to get into and start talking about right now. What are we going to discuss tonight? We're going to discuss the signs of an unhappy gut. We're going to discuss the factors that impact your gut. We're going to talk about what a normal bowel function is, or a bowel movement is, vagus nerve support, mindful eating, boosting our digestive fire, and how to actually eat for healthy gut and healthy gut function. So quite a bit to get through tonight. At the end, we'll have a bit of a question and answer session. So please feel free to, drop me any questions at the end of the seminar or the webinar tonight. So let's talk about the signs that your gut is not happy. So you can see there on the left, there is a lot of gut symptoms. So we've got things like constipation or incomplete bowel emptying, diarrhea, loose stools, bloating, indigestion, reflux, nausea, stomach cramps, food intolerances, IBS, all of those types of things are very clear signs that clearly something's not right with the gut. But if you look at the other column, you might be thinking, what does any of those things have to do with my gut? So maybe you have skin issues, maybe you have mood issues, anxiety, depression, period problems, heavy menstrual cramps, PMS, pain, endometriosis, fatigue, insomnia, thyroid issues, weak immunity, even weight loss or weight gain issues. They're all categorically linked to an unhappy or an unhealthy gut. So I'm going to sort of delve into those things a little bit more as we go through tonight's masterclass. But just know, as you can see there, basically all health conditions has some element to the gut and the gut not functioning properly. I didn't put on that list, but cardiovascular and blood glucose issues absolutely also linked with an unhappy gut. So most of you have probably heard of the term leaky gut, but do you know what it actually is? So essentially, leaky gut is intestinal permeability, and we all have some degree of intestinal permeability. That's not the issue. So everyone's gut is semi-permeable, and this basically means that the mucus lining of our intestines are designed to absorb water and nutrients from our food into our bloodstream. So the issue is, in a leaky gut situation, is that some people's intestinal permeability is hyperactive, or it's larger or more open than what it should be. So I've got a couple of diagrams here on the screen. You've got the sign here of a healthy gut and then a leaky gut, essentially. And the issue with these leaky guts is that sometimes these live bacteria can lodge into our tissues and create an immune reaction or an immune response. So if our intestinal barrier is impaired, these toxins go into our bloodstream and then they can trigger an immune response or an inflammatory response. So part of the job of the intestinal lining, as you can see here, is to keep or act as a barrier to protect the gut from bacteria and other infections. So what are some signs of a leaky gut? So this is sort of leaky gut specific. What causes leaky gut, better still? IBS, gluten or living with celiac disease and not knowing about it, food allergies, GMO food or genetically modified foods, a diet high in processed foods, alcohol, a chronic overuse of anti-inflammatory drugs or other prescription medications, chemotherapy, radiation, pollution, stress, antibiotic use. So unfortunately, our modern lifestyle essentially is all contributing to this leaky gut situation or leaky gut pandemic. And so in reality, we should all live as if we have some measure of leaky gut. So we need to be doing things every day to really support our intestinal permeability, because it really is absolutely vital. As you can see there, if there are these sort of holes essentially in the gut lining or the mucal lining, then, you know, this is really the start of all issues when it comes to our gut. So point of the matter is we all have some level of leaky gut. And so this is why we're going to talk about the importance of making sure that we do things every day to support our gut health. So let's talk about some other specific factors that are impacting our guts. So again, we talk about our diet, high in processed foods, food intolerances, pesticides sprayed on our produce, stress, prescription medication, specifically anti-inflammatory, so things like Nurofen, Voltaren, taking them on a regular basis, antibiotics, poor oral hygiene. In fact, our gut health actually starts in our mouth. So our oral hygiene is a huge one. Unprotected sex even, skin irritations and pollution. So a lot of factors, like I mentioned before, basically our daily lifestyle is all affecting negatively our gut. So we can see the importance of making sure that we do things daily to support our gut, because we're living in a world where, these things are thrown at us. So we have to make sure that we are constantly working at supporting our gut health. So I wanted to touch on food sensitivities. This has come up a couple of times now, and I've put in here a list of some very common food sensitivity checklists. So, of course, we've got our digestive symptoms that can come along when you have a certain food and it creates this sensitivity or this, hyperimmune response. But there's also other symptoms of food sensitivity. So there's unrelated to our gut symptoms, things like a headache, things like fatigue, irritability, insomnia, tonsil stones, skin breakouts. So a whole host of symptoms can come back to our food and what is actually happening in that response in our gut from the food that we're eating. So oftentimes, when we have noticed one of my clients has some food sensitivities, avoiding that certain food or food group for a period of time is good to allow the gut to heal. However, just having a whole host of food sensitivities and always having to avoid those foods is definitely not the answer to healing your gut. And I would say food sensitivities really are a symptom of an unhappy, inflamed, or, poor beneficial bacteria gut. So yes, you will hear some people, be put on these really strict sort of, elimination diets. And like I said, for a period of time, absolutely they do work, but not long-term. Long-term, we want to be looking at why the gut is having such a reaction, or why the body is having such a reaction to certain foods, and how we can essentially fix it. Of course, this does not include things like celiac. Of course, if someone is celiac, that's a different story altogether. They're having a biological or immune reaction to gluten, the protein in gluten. And yeah, that's sort of something that you should really always be mindful of. So let's talk now about our bowel movements. One of my favorite subjects to talk about with my clients, because it gives me so much relevant and amazing information about their health. So we can see here, maybe you guys have already seen this chart before, but this is the Bristol stool chart. And we see here a variation of 7 different types of bowel movements. And I always ask my clients, and I definitely recommend you guys check your bowel movements after each movement, because like I said, valuable information in your stool or in your bowel movement. So what actually is a healthy bowel movement? You can see here, it's a variation essentially of type 3 and type 4. I always like to go for type 4 because that is telling me that they're well hydrated, adequate fiber in the diet. Any variation of either 3 or 4 is definitely needing some extra support. So ideally, absolutely, we need to be having a bowel movement at least once a day, and that's a complete emptying type 4 bowel movement every day. Without adequate bowel movements, we're essentially not able to create a new set of microbiome or a new set of gut bacteria. And if someone has mobility issues, they could still be having, say, something like type 7 or type 6, so these diarrhea type runny stools. Actually, that can still be a sign of constipation. Essentially, this is like the body's last-ditch attempt to get the stuff out, so it makes it really watery. So really, anything other than 4 is essentially constipation of some form. So we have this amazing thing in our gut called the mygating motor complex, and essentially it's like a broom. And if we are not having that broom, if we're not cleansing out our bowel movements, or we're not cleansing out our colon through a healthy bowel movement, then we're in a position where we can have pathogens, bacteria, parasites overgrown in our gut, and again, creating a bit of a leaky gut environment. So really, really important that we have daily bowel movements that are a type 4. This is almost the first most fundamental thing I do with my clients, is making sure that they get their bowels moving first and foremost, because it's our elimination pathway of choice, that and our liver. And it's really important to, again, not only help to get out the old garbage, for want of a better word, but also really important to make sure that our body can then produce a new set of health beneficial microbiome. So here's a few tips for what you can do for a healthy bowel movement. Of course, drink water. Water is basically the fundamental when it comes to our bowel movements and our digestive system. If we're not drinking enough water, our body will actually start to suck water from our intestinal lining. And it's like the first sign of constipation is, linked to dehydration. So definitely drinking adequate water. Eating adequate amounts of fiber. I'm going to talk about that very specifically later on in the webinar tonight. Of course, also, our body loves routine. So if you can get into a routine or a pattern of, going to the bathroom at the same time every night, every day, or in the morning, whatever it is. The body loves that regular routine. It knows how to work with a routine. When we're out of routine, maybe you're going on a holiday or you're going to stay at a friend's house. Anytime you go out of routine, the body doesn't like it. And then this can make things a little bit more difficult. So as much as possible, stick to a bathroom routine. Breathe. So oftentimes when you're in that constipated state, you're straining and you're pushing and it's really uncomfortable. That's, again, the worst thing. You got to think about our bowels and our colon like a muscle. It needs to relax for everything to flow properly. So doing some deep breaths when you're sitting on the toilet, just to help the bowels open up and feel relaxed and be able to clear. Another great thing to do is something like a stomach massage, using things like essential oils. Peppermint's one of my favorites because it is, fantastic for bringing blood flow to any area that it touches. So peppermint's awesome to rub over the lower abdomen area to help get things moving as well. Exercise, fantastic. Mobility for motility. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more specifically later on as well. But exercise is fantastic. Something especially like rebounding. You think about bouncing up and down on a trampoline. You're able to get those bowels and the digestive system firing up. And then, as you can see here in the picture, a bit random, but a footstool. A real fantastic tip for anyone that struggles with constipation, irregular bowel movements, is getting a footstool. So this is not new. You think of ancient cultures, they always used to squat to open their bowels. And that squatting position is actually the most easiest for the bowels, and the way that our colon is designed and our intestines are designed, it's actually easiest for for fecal matter to clear out through the bowels when we're in that squatting position. So we're now sitting on these toilets with our feet down. We're in the worst position possible to actually help the gravity and help a bowel movement. So elevating our feet and like sitting on or standing on that, or whenever possible squatting, actually helps gravity and helps the body to be able to naturally clear things out. So something as simple as using a footstool and breathing could do wonders essentially for helping those regular bowel movements. So let's talk about really important factor, that your gut health affects your whole body health. Now, I want to spend a bit of time on this because, again, really important to know that we have different axes or different, parts of or communication channels, and there's a lot of our communication channels from our gut to our mind or our brain, our gut to our thyroid, our gut to our immune system, our gut to our skin. And the point of the matter is that our microbiome or our gut bacteria, as you can see here, our good flora, is actually the key to regulating our immune system. And when our immune system is happy, it's going to create balance in the body, and then this is going to create communication with our tissues and our organs, that everything is happy and well in the body. So we have this gut-thyroid connection. A healthy gut microbiome is beneficial for healthy gut thyroid function, and very common you see if there's any gut inflammation, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, H. pylori infection, blastocystis infection, very common to have thyroid issues, very common to have sluggish thyroid and hyperactive thyroid, Hashimoto's, very common, highly linked with our gut. And of course, really important to mention is the gut-skin axis. So this is really important. The microbiome on our skin actually talk to the microbiome in our gut. They have this amazing communication happening. And so when we have gut dysbiosis, and what I mean by that is imbalance of good to bad bacteria in our gut, then it's going to create a whole reaction again with our skin, and again coming back to essentially this immune response. So you've probably, of course, all know about the gut-brain axis. So our neurotransmitters for a healthy, happy mood are created in our gut. And then, of course, our HPA or our adrenal axis, very much linked to our gut as well. So when we actually accept the fact that the gut health is paramount for whole body health, as I mentioned, we're going to be much more likely to make sure we do all of the things we can to support our gut health. So here's just a couple of basic, facts about the whole gut, whole body health link. And it's really important to mention that we're actually more bacteria than we are cells. So these gut bacteria, this gut microbiome creates these friendly bacteria or these friendly substances called short-chain fatty acids, and they are the key for everything. They create neurotransmitters, things like serotonin, GABA for healthy, happy mood. They help to clear excess candida. They support our hormones, and they're really important for our body circulation and our skin. So there's links now to short-chain fatty acids being linked to inflammatory diseases like diabetes, obesity, heart disease. So if we have low beneficial bacteria, we have low short-chain fatty acids, and this is the cascade of health issues. So now we know about how important our gut health is to our whole body health. Let's talk about some specific ways we can start to heal our gut. So there is roughly 100 trillion bacteria in our digestive system alone. And like I mentioned before, we have a microbiome on our skin. As women, we have a vaginal microbiome. So these are all constantly communicating with each other. But just in our digestive system alone, 100 trillion different bacteria. So that's pretty amazing. And when you think of them like a little community, they need certain things to function and to thrive, then we want to be doing all we can to support our gut. A common question I get asked is, how long does it take to heal the gut? How long is a piece of string? Unfortunately, it really does depend on the state of your gut. It depends on how long you've had the issues for, but a lot of research shows that within 1 to 2 days or 2 to 4 days of eating right, your gut bacteria can start to change. So as little as 2 to 4 days of eating correctly, eating in a way that's, microbiome boosting, you can actually start seeing those beneficial gut bacteria changing. That's not answering the question, though, that you've got 4 days and then your gut's healed. That's just the beginning process of getting your microbiome working, not the whole thing. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So most important thing to talk about, if not anything else, is to know about the vagus nerve. Not a lot of information out there yet about the vagus nerve, but I'm talking about on the Instagram community, but there's a lot of research behind the vagus nerve on the other side, on the science base. But vagus nerve is one of the most important nerves or connections between our gut and our brain. And as you can see here, basically every other system in our body, every other organ in our body. It runs from our brain all the way down to our small intestines or our colon. And essentially it's known as the wandering nerve because it wanders throughout the whole body. And it's known for activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system is our rest, reset, and digest. So if we have issues with our vagus nerve, this can be impaired by brain injury. It's impaired by our posture, not sitting appropriately, lack of relaxation, lack of exercise, high stress. But if we have issues with our vagus nerve, we're absolutely going to have issues with our digestive system because this is what activates our rest and digest and reset, that really important function of adequate digestion, our parasympathetic nervous system. So a couple of things I wanted to mention. I have done a whole post about the vagus nerve on my Instagram. Definitely recommend checking that out with some of the symptoms of the issues there. But a couple of things to mention is if you've got issues with your blood pressure, your heart rate, your resting heart rate, maybe you have tinnitus in the ears, maybe you feel nauseous, dizzy, lightheaded, all of these things can be signs that your vagus nerve needs some extra support. And of course, if there's digestive issues, that's another sign that the vagus nerve needs some support or some toning or stimulating. Luckily, there is actually heaps we can do to support our vagus nerve. There's cold face wash. So you've probably seen me do it on Instagram. I'm obsessed with cold water plunges. So if I'm ever near the ocean, I'm going into the water first thing in the morning. That is probably the best way of stimulating the vagus nerve. but I don't live near the ocean. I live in Parramatta. So all I can do now is immerse my face in ice cold water or cold water every morning. And that's going to, activate or start to stimulate your vagus nerve. Remember, it's from your brain all the way down to your gut. So cold face wash or cold face immersion in a bucket or a bowl of cold water, fantastic way. Also loud gargling, singing is one of the greatest ways to activate the vagus nerve. Again, we talk about the stomach massage, intermittent fasting, and something that, again, not a lot of information out there yet, a lot of research but not information, is shaking. So this is where you shake one part of your body, and you do it for 10 to 30 seconds, and what that does is it helps to activate or stimulate the vagus nerve, but also helps to clear out excess adrenaline and cortisol that's stuck in the body. And of course, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for our vagus nerve, opposes the sympathetic nervous system, which is going to be that adrenaline and that cortisol, that stress response. So this shaking or this dancing is a really good way of activating our vagus nerve as well. Now, let's talk about the next sort of few tips we can do, and that is mindful eating. So mindful eating sounds a bit random and sounds a bit wannabe, but actually it just goes back to culturally and how our ancestors had actually eaten for centuries and the like. So essentially it's the idea of stoking our digestive fire. We want to make sure that our gut is in that position where it can actually have the enzymes and the minerals and the digestive acids to break down and use food properly. If our digestive fire is weak, we're going to have issues with breaking down our enzymes in the food, and then this is going to create a whole host of gut issues. So simple, chew your food. Sounds simple, I know, but truly chew your food. Make a real conscious effort of chewing your food 30 times. Put your cutlery down between mouthfuls if that's going to make it easier. But just have the goal of chewing your food 30 times with every mouthful. Never eat when you're stressed. If you're stressed and you eat because it's lunchtime or whatever, you're out at a restaurant or whatever, worst thing that you can do for your gut, like quite literally the worst thing, because you are putting all this food in, and it actually takes a lot of calories and a lot of energy for our food to be digested. But if you're putting food in when your gut is stressed or your body is stressed, it's going to sit there in the gut and it's going to ferment, and then this is going to create dysbiosis. It's going to create parasites and candida and all of the nasties. So rule of thumb, never eat when you're stressed. I spoke earlier about the migrating motor complex. So this is that broom, essentially, and this gets activated with time. So what I mean by that is if we're constantly snacking, so we have breakfast, then, an hour later we're having lunch, a snack of some sort, you never allow that broom to get activated. So you want to allow time between your meals. Breakfast, good quality lunch, 3 hours later, good quality dinner, 4 or 5 hours later, whatever it is, but you want to be allowing time between meals so that this broom can get activated and it can sweep up and sweep out whatever hasn't been digested so it can clear it out through the body. Another really important thing, and this is very common in a lot of Asian cultures and all other cultures, is that they don't drink water or liquid with the actual meal. So they'll have their drink and they may have it after, but they don't actually drink with the meal itself, because this is the idea that they're washing away their digestive enzymes or their digestive fire. So eat your food and then have your drink later. Another really interesting thing is if you go into an Asian sort of restaurant, definitely in the Persian culture, it's very common. They actually don't talk a lot during their meals. And I remember finding that quite interesting with my husband, when we were, having dinner together, whatever else, he wasn't talking a lot. And I'm not a huge, but I'm an extrovert. And I'm like, what's happening here? And then I asked essentially, and it's very common in Persian culture and that sort of Eastern culture, that you don't talk a lot during meals, because you're swallowing more air as you talk, and this is going to affect your digestion, create nausea and cause bloating and gas. But also, it's taking your attention and your focus away from the food. And so that's another sort of interesting fact. I don't recommend it all the time if you're out for dinner, chat away, but if you're in your home environment, maybe don't sort of chat too much when eating. Just allow that time for your meal and then move on to the chatting at some other point. Now, let's talk again about some other ways we can boost our digestive fire. Now, it's really important to think of our gut like a fire that needs constant fuel and constant stoking. And you want that fire to be burning quite fierily, as I mentioned. And it all really does start with good gut acid. So again, we're talking about this idea that the gut and the body loves regularity, loves routine, loves structure. So ideally, wherever possible, follow a regular meal schedule. Have breakfast at the same time every day, lunch, dinner, all of the things. That's just allowing your body to trigger that it knows when to expect food, and it's not so much of a shock or a stress on the system. Always eat sitting down in a settled environment without the TV or without the use of devices. I've personally just totally removed this. I used to sit in front of, on the floor, but I would be scrolling. One of the worst things you can do. I now sit at the table with no distractions, and it significantly transforms your gut. So something simple, but dedicate time to sit down, eat in that really calm environment. This really important to mention: breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and dinner like a pauper. So our main fire, you think about it, when you first wake up, you've been fasting for the last 8 hours or however long. This is the time when your gut is ready for food. So this should be your biggest meal. Breakfast should be ideally your biggest meal. And then lunch, still good, that fire's still burning in the gut, and then dinner less. Dinner's starting to sort of slow down. The gut acid is starting to slow down a little bit. So if we can eat wherever possible in that sort of state, very beneficial for our gut. We want to avoid drinking too much cold food or cold drinks. Cold in a lot of cultures, of course, depending on, seasons, but cold dampens our digestive fire. And so definitely in winter, we want to be avoiding cold foods, cold water, salads, definitely. Summer's a different story. You can definitely include, but I would definitely include some of those warming spices like cinnamon, ginger, black pepper, whilst eating some salad or whatever, just to make sure that you're stoking that digestive fire. Ghee. I'm not sure if you've heard of ghee, but ghee is basically clarified butter, and it's fantastic. It's very common in Ayurvedic or Indian medicine. It's like a tonic for the body, and it's one of the best ways or fats or oils for cooking. It helps to lubricate our food, hydrate our intestines, boost absorption and assimilation of nutrients. So wherever possible, cook with ghee. You can make it yourself, actually, just with organic butter. Or you can buy it from, we're lucky here in Sydney to have a lot of Indian supermarkets, and we can grab it that way. Health food shops have it. It's overpriced. You can get it cheaper. You can make it yourself cheaper. But ghee, fantastic. Use that as a way of, as your oil for cooking. Again, as I mentioned before, using those herbs or those spices like cinnamon, ginger, black pepper, turmeric, you can add them easily into your diet. Whether you're having a salad, roasted veggies, put those spices on your veggies, or add it in your dressing or whatever else. But you can add those spices, and that's going to stoke that digestive fire. Again, avoiding as much as possible raw food. Of course, like I said, salad is a different story, but not too much. Cooked food is much easier in the digestive system. It's gentler on the digestive system. Too much raw food is fine, but it takes a lot of gut acid. So if your diet is predominantly salad based, you need like really good gut acid to be able to break that down and to use and assimilate the food. So yes, have it, but have it in moderation. And again, I would definitely say adding some of those warming spices to make sure that your gut is able to actually break down and use the food. A good rule of thumb when eating is to fill our stomach to 50%, actually. So we don't want to ever get to the point where we're so full that we're bursting. This is not good for the gut. It's really putting a lot of pressure on the gut. So always allow around 25% of our gut to be empty. And if you think about our stomach, it's actually the size of two of our fists. So if you think that's not a lot of food, we shouldn't be eating any more of that in any one sitting. And I'm talking about your own fist. So whatever, some people have smaller hands, others have larger. But think about that. You don't ever want to be eating much more than that in the course of a sitting, because this is too much energy, too much stress for the gut and for the digestive system. Really important, I talk about this, is exercise. Now, it doesn't have to be anything strenuous, anything too intense, even just walking. So this ideal of mobility or physical movement for motility. So it definitely gets our bowels moving and our bowels emptying, but it also increases our beneficial bacteria. Those endorphins, they have a effect in our beneficial gut bacteria. So it's also going to boost our digestive fire. And I know after doing, a big walk or some exercise, I'm starving. And yes, that is our metabolism, but it also is a sign that we're getting that digestive fire going. Now, a couple of questions here. I'll leave them with you to, have a read, take a screenshot, whatever it is. But this is very common Ayurvedic Indian medicine. A couple of questions to ask yourself when you're eating. So before eating, am I really hungry? Is my gut in a position to be able to break down and use these foods? Do you have the hunger cues? Are you feeling hungry, essentially? Do I need to use the bathroom first? In an Indian culture, again, Ayurvedic medicine, they don't like you to, eat with a full bladder or a full bowel, needing to use the bowel movements. Also, making sure that we're in good company. Are we eating when we feel relaxed and with good friends? Our surroundings are really important for that mind-gut connection. Did I express gratitude for the meal? So whether that's saying a prayer or saying thanks to the chef or whatever it is, that's, again, putting your body in a position where you feel gratitude for that food and you're going to be able to absorb it better. Again, we're talking about here ginger powder, apple cider vinegar, fantastic tools, easy kitchen medicine that will boost our gut acid and our gut fire. Then during eating, some questions you can ask yourself: am I rushing? We want to make sure we take our time when eating. Am I appreciating this meal? And then midway through the meal, ask yourself, am I satisfied? Do I actually need to eat more? Make sure that we're filling up our stomach half and then leaving space for adequate digestion as well. And then very simple thing you can do after eating, very common in a lot of Indian restaurants, is I'll have a little teaspoon of some seeds, and that's fennel, cumin, and cardamom seeds. Chew on half a teaspoon of them. They'll get that gut acid boosting and make sure you can actually break down and absorb the nutrients from your food. Now, let's talk about some other factors that influence or impact the healing of our gut. I couldn't not talk about stress, of course. Stress, we've got that mind, body, vagus nerve, gut brain link. So stress support, really important. We can do things like deep belly breathing, meditation, exercise, journaling, whatever it is to make sure that you're supporting your stress levels. Sleep, we want to make sure that we're having adequate sleep. If we don't sleep, our body doesn't repair, and certainly it's going to impact our gut. Again, mention there, exercise, avoid smoking, keep alcohol in its place. But I want to spend just a little bit of time quickly talking about the importance of balancing our hormones. So our hormones and our gut are absolutely linked. If you as a woman have a regular menstrual cycle, you are definitely going to have fluctuations in your bowel movements, fluctuations in your digestion, and fluctuations in your beneficial gut bacteria. So this is normal, this is natural as our hormones like estrogen and progesterone rise and fall. Estrogen has a fantastic impact actually on our gut movement, increases our bowel movements, and increases our gut bacteria. Whereas progesterone, which is active at the, that perimenstrual, that premenstrual sort of side part of the cycle, actually slows down digestion. So the hormone progesterone is designed to extract as much nutrients from our food. So it's common for women to feel a bit more bloated or have more constipation around that couple of weeks before their period's due and during their period. Now, this is normal, this is natural, but we can still do a lot to counteract that. So when you know you're going into that premenstrual phase of your cycle, making sure you have more fiber, making sure you have more water, more movement to make sure your bowels are working properly. So really important point to mention that your hormones absolutely correlate to your gut health. And really important that you're doing the things you can to make sure that you balance your hormones, because they're very much linked to how well your gut is functioning, and vice versa. If the gut's working properly, you're also then able to clear out excess hormones, and you're not getting this estrogen dominance or androgen dominance if your gut's working properly. So another link there between the gut health and whole body health. Now, let's talk about a couple of foods that negatively or hurt your gut. So again, looking at this, oh my goodness, it's pretty much what everyone eats all the time. Unfortunately, we're surrounded by it in our supermarkets, but you can still do a lot to counteract this. So I've mentioned it here. Alcohol, use in moderation, enjoy when you have it, but don't drink every night and don't drink in excess. It wipes out our gut bacteria, it affects our digestive enzymes, and when these foods that hurt our gut will either create that leaky gut, can create parasites, can feed pathogens or gut opportunistic bacteria. So we want to make sure that we are, as much as possible, avoiding these types of foods. PUFAs are polyunsaturated fatty acids. They're omega-6 oils. They're in fried foods. They're in packaged foods. They're in all of the delicious things like chips and chocolate. So again, moderation. We have to live, but moderation. And if you are doing a gut cleanse, or if you are doing some gut work, then yeah, definitely want to be avoiding these foods altogether. I've put in there factory farmed meat. Really important, because factory farmed meat is exposed to synthetic hormones and antibiotics. And of course, then that's going to impact our gut as well. Artificial sweeteners. So oftentimes people are opting for these low fat or, artificially sweetened foods. Just have real sugar, have, honey, have maple syrup, have fruit. Your gut knows what to do with that. It doesn't know what to do with alcohol sugars and synthetic sugars, or these sugar sweet substitutes. It doesn't know how to work with that. It doesn't know what it is, and so it's going to create gut dysbiosis essentially. I've put there caution with gluten and refined grains. Again, go to Europe, you'll probably be fine with these things. Gluten's not a problem, but here in Australia and in America, unfortunately, our gluten is very poor. It is, overloaded with glycosates and pesticides, and that's probably the bigger issue. And if anyone does have gut issues, definitely avoiding gluten, for a period of time to heal that leaky gut is, one of the most important things we can do. So let's talk more importantly now about the foods that we can eat to boost our gut acid or our gut health. So I've basically put them in three sort of sections. Fiber. Fiber is the thing that actually feeds our microbiome. It's the food that our gut bacteria eats. So we've got soluble fiber. Soluble fiber attracts water and, turns that gel into digestion. It actually helps to clear out things from the body. So chia seeds, psyllium husks, apples, blueberries, legumes, obsessed with legumes, fantastic. Insoluble fiber adds bulk to the stool and actually helps to make sure that you have regular bowel movements. It helps to move food through the intestines quickly, and it's really important for that preventing constipation. And insoluble fiber is so abundant in the plant. kingdom. So any fruit and vegetables, all whole grains can contain insoluble fiber. So whenever I'm speaking with my clients, usually I'm wanting them to focus more on soluble fiber because it is harder to get. It's in chia seeds, psyllium husks, legumes. They're not things that people have on the daily, but people will have fruit and veggies of some sort on the daily. So if you focus on soluble fiber, you'll find that insoluble fiber is easier to get anyway. Now, polyphenols are basically my obsession when it comes to gut health. They are the missing link of gut health. They are really, really rich in antioxidants, and antioxidants are linked with so many health benefits: cholesterol lowering, glucose lowering, obesity lowering, inflammation lowering. So definitely aim for these polyphenols in some form every day. Again, you'll find that they're not normal foods, for want of a better word. Not all of us are eating chestnuts. Not all of us are eating hazelnuts. We eat walnuts and almonds and cashews, which are all great, but these nuts are the ones that are high in the polyphenols. Pomegranate. Like I said, in Persian culture, in Asian culture, Indian culture, they eat pomegranate. It's part of their daily diet type thing. Saffron is too. But the Western culture is not as much. But you can get pomegranate juice, get a good quality organic, no added sugar pomegranate juice, fantastic. Green tea, green and black olives. So plenty of foods high in polyphenols, but we want to make sure that we're actually actively putting them in our diet as much as we possibly can. Now let's talk about amino acids, which is basically protein, okay? But dietary amino acids are basically the major fuel source for our small intestinal mucosa, or the mucus in our small intestines. And they're really important for making sure that we have adequate gut bacteria. They're really important for supporting that leaky gut. A lot of gut infections, so whether it be parasites, candida, bacterial overgrowth, are actually linked to low levels of amino acids in the diet. And, particularly things like glutamine. A lot of people probably have heard of glutamine as the main sort of gut healing enzyme or amino acid. Again, common in a lot of our foods, but we want to be making sure that we're having organic beef and organic poultry, organic dairy, absolutely. And then again, looking at a protein-rich diet. So making sure that we're getting all that complete protein or the complete amino acid profile that's going to make sure that our gut has the fuel that it needs to create more beneficial bacteria. Now, I couldn't not talk about the 3 Ps. I'm pretty sure everyone knows about probiotics. I'm fairly confident people are starting to know about prebiotics, but possibly not a lot of people know about postbiotics. So basically, prebiotics are the food for our gut microbiome. They feed the good bacteria that's already living in our gut, and they don't get destroyed during digestion. So again, not really common foods, probably bananas, maybe kiwis, but Jerusalem artichokes and barley. We need to actively try and put these into our diet, but really important daily to make sure that we're feeding the gut bacteria that we already have in our gut. Now, probiotics contain live microorganisms or live bacteria, and they basically maintain or improve good bacteria in our gut. So again, yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, pickles, and certain cheeses. The cheeses that have the label live culture often contain these probiotics. So commonly cheddar, mozzarella, Gouda, cottage cheese, these are all high in probiotics as well. Now, postbiotics is actually the term that the waste is this term refers to the waste left behind after your body digests both pre and probiotics. So after your body has digested the pre and probiotics, it creates postbiotics. And these postbiotics include things like vitamin B, vitamin K, our amino acids, antimicrobial peptides that help to clear out pathogenic bacteria. So essentially they're what create short chain fatty acids. And I mentioned very early on that short chain fatty acids are the key to health. So postbiotics are things that help to boost short chain fatty acid production. Now, I've got the 3 most common short chain fatty acids there, but the most important out of all 3 of them is your butyrate. So this is, again, foods like legumes. Legumes have come up numerous times. Cognac noodles. Cognac noodles are being coined as like a diet or a weight loss noodle, but forget that. They're actually a form of, what do you call it? Come to me in a second, but they're very it takes a long time for our gut to digest, and so basically they're constantly feeding resistant starch, so they're constantly feeding our gut beneficial bacteria. So that cool potatoes, cognac noodles, you can get them from most health food shops, definitely Asian supermarkets. So more foods that we can readily add into our diet to support our gut health. Now, I wouldn't be much of a herbalist if I didn't at least mention some herbs for gut support, my favourite section. So we want to be adding herbs into our diet every single day, whether it's in the form of cooking, so using fresh herbs, dry herbs, but definitely in the form of herbal teas as well. Herbal teas are super powerful, and when under the guidance, you can definitely use herbal medicines in the liquid or tablet or capsule form, but under the guidance of a herbalist. So how can we add more herbs for gut support? There's those spices I've already mentioned before: cinnamon, ginger, turmeric, clove, garlic, cumin. I'm going to say saffron. Basically, any spice that you have in your kitchen cabinet, I guarantee you has some benefit for your gut. Whether it's antimicrobial, whether it's anti-parasite, antifungal. Also, the benefit there of actually being able to heal the gut lining and boost beneficial bacteria. We can also add bitter greens, so things like collards, turnip greens, broccoli, endive, chicory, dandelion leaf. If anyone has dandelion leaf or stinging nettle growing in their garden, don't, pour weed killer over it. Eat it. It's so amazing. One of the greatest things for your gut, for your liver, is dandelion and stinging nettle leaf. We've also got other antimicrobial herbs: oregano, thyme, sage, rosemary, garlic. Plenty of amazing food as medicine in our, daily life that we can add in that's going to have beneficial factors for our gut health. Now, there are some specific herbs that are really good for healing that leaky gut or that intestinal permeability. So we've got things like marshmallow root. Probably not a lot of people have heard of marshmallow. It's amazing. You can get it as a herbal tea from your health food shop. Have it as a cold water infusion, though. You don't want to heat marshmallow because it, the enzymes get destroyed essentially with hot water. But marshmallow root, calendula tea, one of my favorite herbs, calendula, for gut healing. It also has the ability to heal like peptic ulcers and ulcers in the gut. And then aloe vera juice, another beautiful thing that you can do to heal the gut, really safe herb as well. And then when we do get some of these gut symptoms, even if we're eating perfectly, even if we're managing our stress, we still might eat something that has something in it or, maybe contains some sort of parasite or pathogen. These herbs we can have on hand in a tea form, fantastic to ease the symptoms. So lemon balm, chamomile, meadow sweet, peppermint, ginger, all of the herbs in my digest tea, might I add. Fantastic for soothing the digestive system, and they're all carminative herbs that help to relieve cramps and gas and bloating and all of those uncomfortable gut symptoms. All right, let's talk about, we're almost at the end, but let's talk about this. This all just looks like random information probably to a lot of you, but this is the gut microbiome mapping. This is key. One of the greatest tools that I use in my clinic, and it gives me so much information about the state of what's happening with my client's gut. Now, I'm not going to go into detail into all of this because it's like another whole webinar in itself, but just know that from one stool sample or from one bowel movement, we can know basically everything that's happening in your gut. everything that is potentially creating, issues. And this particular, bowel sample is linked to screening for pathogenic bacteria, commensal bacteria, all of the things that are going to impact your health. So we want to be, again, super amazing tool. If you're a client of mine, you probably already know about this. You've probably already had one of these. If you're not a client, just know that there's these tests out there, and we can just fast track your healing journey in any area of health once we have this kind of a test. It's just so valuable, this information. If anyone's got any questions about this, you feel free to ask me at the end. So let's finish up. All right, so let's work together to heal your gut. So I've put there again, any issues, if you're dealing with stomach pain, IBS symptoms, it's not normal. IBS, again, is a symptom of something else. IBS, our doctors love telling people they've got IBS because it's a bit of an escape. It's just a bit of a way of, not investigating any further. But IBS is a symptom, essentially. It's a symptom that your gut's not happy. There's something going on in the gut. It's not a disease state in itself by any means. Again, irregular bowel movements, whether they're too loose, constipated, fatigue, sleep issues, food intolerances, sugar cravings, the huge sign of something going on in the gut, weight gain, skin irritations, period problems, mood issues, anything like that, just know that is definitely linked. There is some sort of link there to your gut. And that gut microbiome mapping test I spoke about gives really good information into it. Now, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We learned that between 2 to 4 days that your gut microbiome starts improving with healthy diet. I'm here to tell you that it can take between 6 to 24 months to completely heal your gut, especially if you've had a lot of antibiotics in your life. So gut healing isn't a quick solution, unfortunately. You can, like I mentioned, you can start noticing improvements quite quickly, 2 to 4 days. You can start noticing small improvements, but you want to be investing in doing these things for 6 months or more at the minimum to make sure that you're getting your gut in that position. And once the gut is in a healthy position, you're no longer going to need supplements. You're no longer need the powders and the herbs and things, but you're going to be looking at your constant diet and lifestyle. As I mentioned to you previously, our gut microbiome is its own community, essentially, and so we are living with a community of bacteria inside us. We have to make sure that it is working properly and that we're feeding it and doing all of the things to make sure that it's happy. So it's like a full-time job. But if you eat how we were designed to eat, you're 3/4 of the way there, essentially. So remember, heal your gut, heal your body. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, it's pretty easy. Sarah Emily Herbalist in all of the ways.com, at Gmail, at Sarah Emily Herbalist. Pretty easy to remember. But now we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about, or I'm going to answer some questions. So I'm going to just do the stop share. And then if anyone's got any questions, feel free to touch base. Anyone? Any questions? Yeah, Jess?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So my question, foods, I don't know if this is going off track a bit, but foods like lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, I've heard that they're strong in fiber, but are they too heavy for your digestion if you've got bad digestion? Like, does all that heavy food lead to leaky gut because it gets stuck or something? Because I've read something about lectins. Is that related to gut health, or I don't really know much about it?
Yeah, that's actually a fantastic question. And a lot of people, steer clear of legumes, lentils, chickpeas, blah, 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 because of the lectins. And yes, but every food, like every plant food essentially contains some sort of lectin. If you prepare the legumes and the lentils chickpeas properly, so you soak them and you cook them appropriately, it removes 99% of the lectins, and so they're not an issue for the gut anymore. Now, a lot of people can feel more bloated when they're starting to add more fiber into the diet and things like that. And definitely legumes can, in someone who's already got a fermentive gut or low gut acid, definitely these legumes and lentils can create a bit more of a, initially some sort of bloating and issues. But, if you can get your gut acid, or if you can soak them, soak them properly, cook them properly, and then eat them with spices like cinnamon and turmeric and ginger, how actually, again, traditionally they've always been eaten, then you'll find that, no, you're going to get more benefits than not from eating them. That answer the question?
It doesn't. Just how do you soak them? So, say like you get the chickpeas from a can,
Yeah.
of course, organic.
Yeah.
I usually just rinse it with hot water, but am I supposed to soak that in something like overnight, or?
Yeah. So if you have some gut issues going on and you're easily fermentive gut, and you are noticing that you get some sort of reaction to some gut to legumes and lentils and things like that, I would say get your can, rinse them like a million times until the water runs clear, essentially, and then soak them. It doesn't even have to be overnight, but for a couple of hours with a pinch of black pepper and even some apple cider vinegar or some lemon juice. That sort of activates them, and that helps to even speed up the soaking process, essentially, or the pre-digestive process, essentially. But on the note of legumes, I've had clients heal their many hormonal issues like migraines and hormonal headaches and things like that from adding legumes into their diet. So you can do a lot with them, but yeah, they do need to be prepared properly, definitely.
Okay, great. Thanks.
That's okay, good. Anyone else got any questions? Put your hand up, or you can just answer or speak. No? No one else? Anyone? No? Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for joining.